Welcome everybody, and today we're taking a look at a brand new Film Masters special edition release, and it is a duo film release, and say I've done many times in the past. And the first of those films is 1950's Destination Moon, and then we'll also be looking at 1951's Flight to Mars. Which isn't an afterthought, by the way. It does have its own disc. And the first film, Destination Moon, directed by Irving Pichel, who also co-directed the 1932 version of The Most Dangerous Game. And this is a science fiction film, clocking in at 91 minutes long. And stars the likes of John Archer, who I've seen in 8 other films. He was also in the likes of White Heat, Decision at Sundown, and City of Fear. You've also got Warner Anderson, who was in High Wall and Rio Contras, as well as Tom Powers, who was in a couple of excellent film noirs like Double Indemnity and The Blue Dahlia, as well as The Phantom Speaks. And finally, you got Erin O'Brien Moore, who was in The Family Secret, which is one of the many film noirs that make up the box sets behind me. And so this is about a team who are composed of an aerospace scientist, an ex-Air Force general, and an industrialist who conceive an ambitious plan to land Americans on the moon. From their base in the Mojave Desert, they construct and successfully launch a spacecraft named Luna that contains a cargo of 4 astronauts, but a critical miscalculation of needed power to escape the moon's gravitational pull put the astronauts' lives in danger. So this is a landmark effort in science fiction filmmaking in its attempts to be as realistic as possible in depicting traveling to the moon based on the knowledge of the time. And it is quite frankly remarkable how close it actually comes to what would happen nearly 2 decades later. Now, it isn't the first film to depict spaceflight on film. Specifically from the 1950s, as there was a film that came out just before this called Rocket Ship XM. Now that was made to bank on the success of this film, as this film had been long since promoted for about 2 years or so or thereabouts. Talking about how long it took to make it, talking about how it the format that it's in, the size of the budget and such. So because it was well publicized that this film was coming out, inevitably there was going to be a inferior effort as far as some people are concerned, although I haven't seen it myself, that would come out beforehand to capitalize on the success of this film. Apparently, Rocket Ship XM only cost about $90,000, whereas this cost more than $500,000. So you could arguably consider that to be the first of the rip-off of blockbusters. Obviously, we've had many a mockbuster since, but still, that seems to be the case with that one. But that said, the production to this is also really rather good. It is well paced, the cast is solid, it is engrossing throughout, and the technicolor format not only works, as it looks absolutely excellent, but considering all of the effects, it's quite frankly a rather brave manner in which to do this film, as obviously when it comes to colour, you're going to show up more of the effects in terms of how it's done on miniatures and such than you would do if it's in black and white. Black and white is very good in terms of covering up the cracks in a production, whereas with colour, those cracks can become more evident. But quite frankly, the cracks aren't all that evident in this, to be honest. They are overall really rather good in terms of the effects. You even have some stop motion animation in this as well, when you're looking at the astronauts doing a spacewalk from afar. You can tell it's stop motion, but it still looks fairly decent. So, but unfortunately, there is a little bit too much exposition to this, and it is rather dry effort. But the influence this had on the decade cannot be understated. So, ultimately, a really, really good film and a solid 3.5 out of 5. And then on a separate disc to this one, we have 1951's Flight to Mars, and there's Destination Moon itself. So yeah, Flight to Mars was directed by Leslie Salander, who also did The Vampire's Ghost and The Catman of Paris. Again, a science fiction film, although significantly shorter, at only 71 minutes long. And it has stars the likes of Marguerite Chapman, who was in like The Counterattack and The Amazing Transparent Man. We've got Arthur Franz, who was in several sci-fi films from this decade, like Invaders from Mars, The Atomic Submarine, and Monster on the Campus. But he was also in another really, really good 50s effort called The Sniper, which definitely showed off his acting skills in that. You've also got Virginia Houston, who was in the likes of Out of the Past and Sudden Fear. Cameron Mitchell, who I've seen in 14 other films. I've really rather enjoyed his films like Pier 5 Havana, Three Came to Kill, House of Bamboo, Raw Force, and Blood and Black Lace. And finally got the likes of Maurice Ancram, who was a massive staple of 1950s sci-fi. Seen him in 23 other films in general, though, but he was in the likes of The Giant Claw, Kronos, Invaders from Mars, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers, and more besides. So yeah, four scientists and a newsman crash land on Mars and meet Martians who act friendly. So although this is an extremely by the numbers effort, which is probably not helped by the fact that I've seen 130 of these other 1950 sci-fi films, um, some of which have obviously come after this and done this same kind of similar plot synopsis, it does nonetheless still make for an engaging watch. It also looks good in its cine colour format. The cast is serviceable, the pacing is on point, it doesn't outstay its welcome, the effects are convincing enough, and it has its entertaining moments. But yeah, it's nowhere near as inventive as Destination Moon, nor as influential, and yeah, like I said, a little bit more by the numbers. Now, granted, it probably wasn't quite by the numbers when it was originally released, but obviously, like I said, I've seen a great number of sci-fi films that have dealt with visiting other planets and coming across other Martian civilizations and such like that. So it does feel a little bit familiar to that, but I can forgive it for being, a film that I've only just now seen. So it gets a 3 out of 5. So yeah, overall, really, really glad to have these on Blu-ray. Obviously, being a massive fan of 1950 sci-fi, just to get these on Blu-ray is a good thing. But I'd never seen Flight to Mars before buying this release, so that now means I've now seen 131 of these 1950 sci-fi efforts and now own 2 more, which, yeah, is only a good thing. So we also get a 14-page booklet with this release as well, which has a write-up by Sloane DeForest called One Small Step, One Giant Leap. And it has a quote here from Jules Verne: anything one man can imagine, other men can make real. And yeah, basically just talks about, 1950 sci-fi films, how the fact that, I believe it says about rocket ship XM coming out. Yeah, does it say? Also about George Pal, who produced produced the first film in this release as well. Who'd obviously gone to do the likes of the War of the Worlds. So yeah, it's a decent sized booklet, and yeah, provides some backstory to the films themselves, or at least the first one. And on the disc for Destination Moon, you've got a new full length commentary by Justin Humphries. You got Man's Greatest Adventure, Making Destination Moon, a new documentary from Ballyhoo Motion Pictures. And you also got a restored original 35mm trailer for Destination Moon, and then Destination Moon Pressbook Gallery provided by James Van Heis. And then for Flight to Mars, you've also got a full length commentary by Justin Humphries on that one. Then Interstellar Travelogues, Extended Edition, and updated featurette from Ballyhoo Motion Pictures. Walter Murch from Bomber to Body Snatchers archival documentary, and a restored original trailer for Flight to Mars as well. And as you can see, it says on the front here, new 4K scan from 35mm archival elements for Destination Moon, and then a restored 4K scan for Flight to Mars. And they both look and sound really rather good, quite frankly. Certainly some of the better restoration work for one of these films from the 50s. So, yeah, highly recommend getting this release if you're into your 1950s sci-fi, as I am. Obviously, we have more 1950 sci-fi coming next week, I believe, with Eureka's Beasts Unleashed box set, which features one film I've seen already and another one that I have yet to see. So, yeah, we'll be bumping up more of these sci-fi films from the 50s at some point in the future. But, yeah, well worth getting this, even though it's a little bit expensive to get this imported to the UK. Thinking all it cost about £30, which is obviously quite a lot for 2 standard Blu-rays, but at the end of the day, it's about getting these films on Blu-ray and supporting the work that has gone into doing this film release in general. So yeah, another great release from Film Masters. Obviously, we've talked about them earlier this year with that fourth film release that they did with more 50 sci-fi on there. So yeah, quite frankly, I hope they bring more of them out. Now they have actually done a couple of YouTube premieres of films that they've restored themselves. They did Kronos and oh, I've forgotten now. Completely slipped my mind. But yeah, the fact that they're putting them out on YouTube as well as releasing them physically is only a good thing. Now, I would like them to release those films physically, but whether or not they actually have the rights to do that, we'll have to see. But yeah, those films nonetheless look really rather good in their restored versions, even on YouTube. So I can only imagine they'll look even better on Blu-ray like these two here do. So, yeah, but nonetheless, if you have seen Destination Moon or Flight to Mars before, I'd like to hear your thoughts on them. But nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.